I talk a lot, but I can't. I'm not like really good at talking in front of people. So, but I like Googled this little trick that told me to picture everyone in their underwear. So, great visual. Let's just say that. Before I get to it, thank you for everyone that came here to hear our struggle stories. I call it struggle stories, But most importantly, thanks to Jeff for kind of giving me the chance to share my story. I'm going to open up with a poem by a Kenyan-born Watson Shire. It was like an impromptu thing, so I'm just going to read it off of Google. But it's a really beautiful poem. I'm sure most of you guys have probably heard that little phrase that says, "No one puts their children on a boat unless the water is safer than the land." I'm pretty sure you guys have heard that. So this is home, and the poem's home, so let's get to home. So no one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city burning as well. Your neighbor's running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you. Fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing until the blade burnt threats into your neck. And even then, you carried your anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilet, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you wouldn't be going back. You have to understand that no one puts their children on a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck, feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than the journey. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison, because prison is safer than a city on fire. And one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one's skin would be tough enough. The go-home blacks, refugees, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, sucking our country dry, the N-words with their hands out. They smell strange, savages, messed up their country, and now they want to mess up ours. How do the words, the dirty looks, roll off our backs? Maybe because the blow is softer than a limb torn off. Or the words are more tender than 14 men between your legs. Or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child's body in pieces. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of the gun. And no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore. Unless home told you to quicken your legs and leave your clothes behind. Crawl through the desert, wade through the oceans, drown, save, be hunger, beg, forget pride. Your survival is more important. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, "Leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here." So that's now getting back to me. My name is Hibi, and I come from Somalia. I wrote this just so I don't have to stand here until 2018, and I can kind of get back to my points, because my struggle story can go on for days. Somalia, regardless of what you guys have heard of the news, being this atrocious, barren, despicable speck on the Horn of Africa, is really beautiful. We have beautiful coastlines that stretch for 1,800 miles. One of the longest in all of shithole Africa. Right? We have beautiful culture and tasty cuisines, but this is not a TripAdvisor review, so we're not talking about Somalia. We're talking about me and how I came from one shithole to this shithole. Okay? So I was born under a tree. I say this a lot, and people say, no, really, I was born under a tree in one of the most messed up roads. It's actually famous. If you guys know, it's called Habaruwali. It's a really treacherous road, and no one makes out of it, unscathed. My mom happened to be on it. She was pregnant with me, and she went on labor. Our car stalled, and we were stuck. I was due a month later. Actually, I don't even know what I was doing, trying to come out. But there happened to be an old, partially blind lady, thank God, on there, and I was delivered. But, as dramatic as my entrance to this world has been, my childhood has really been pretty normal. I grew up in Afmedo. It's a nomadic city, which wouldn't surprise you if I told you at the age of 5 I was herding goats. And at the age of 6, really kind of fighting off hyenas because, my life depended on it. Because it did. I couldn't go home a goat short. But my life really did depend on it. So, it was an experience that was normal in where I grew up. You kind of keep your earning. You kind of have to make yourself part of that society by contributing from such a young age. And that went on until, my dad's untimely death made us move to Kismayo, which is a beautiful port city on the banks of the Indian Ocean. And that's where most of my cherished childhood memories were made, really, because it took me from the farmlands and goat herding. There were no cows to mend to just being a kid. Granted, I was the oldest girl of the family, so the brunt of the chores and the adult responsibilities still did fall on me, as our culture dictates. But besides that, I ended up enjoying my time at the Lido Beach, or as we call it, Hep the Lido, and just kind of having a grand old time. And then we were uprooted because my mom couldn't handle raising 7 kids by herself, so 2 of us were shipped off to live with our aunt in Mogadishu, the capital. And that's when I discovered TV. Because we didn't have TV. That's when I discovered the telephone, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm never going back. And it was wonderful. Her husband, who was a professor at one of the local universities, 6 months later decides to enroll us in school because he felt like we needed formal education. Well, duh. But as soon as we were ready to start, and I remember we went out and picked our uniforms, and we were really excited because school was going to start the following day. And that afternoon is when the Civil War happened. Literally, I remember this vividly because it was that single moment that seemed so insignificant, but then it turned out to be significant and changed the course of our whole entire history. And casually, as we were playing outside, we hear this rapid gunfire, followed by gunfire explosions, and you hear all the neighbors coming out and trying to see what's going on. As groups and groups and groups of them come out trying to figure out what's going on, immediately you see pillars of smoke in the horizon, and everybody kind of ushers each other inside and trying to figure out what's going on, and stayed up the whole night calling each other out. And by morning it was clear that our lives were, essentially over as we knew it, really, because nothing ever stayed the same after that. And we stayed at home for the next 3 weeks because no one dared to go outside. It was just, and our uncle would go out and kind of bring us food and brave the elements, but that was, the most. Everyone else stayed in and just stayed out of sight, out of mind, until a bomb hit the edge of our house that we were in and caught on fire. So that jump-started us trying to get out of Somalia. I don't know how long they could have lasted if that didn't happen, but that was like what kind of triggered to just the pick up and move. Hey, Faiza! And so we did up and move. But the thing is, being stuck in the house for 3 weeks, we didn't know how dramatic things have gotten. Because I remember one of the first things when we drove was a stray dog feasting on a human body. The guy laid out flat in the middle of the road, and black crows. And that was one of my first sights of just tragedy, because I had a normal childhood. I've never really been exposed to something like that. And I don't know how my 8-year-old even handled that, because you don't try to internalize it, you just see it for what it is and you just kind of move on. And I lost my little sister when she was 6, and I remember my mom calling me and my brothers to like, before burial, to kind of look at her. And I remember looking at her, I'm like, she was sleeping. I'm sick. She was 6, and I was probably 7 at that point. So it didn't dawn on me that she was dead. The same way the guy that was laying on the floor in the middle of the street didn't dawn on me. It was just, but we kept moving. And it turns out, as the days and weeks and months picked up, it just led to one more dramatic experience after the other. Because our getting out of Somalia led us to, hiding out in one house after the other and paying one person to take us from one checkpoint to another, to hiding in trucks covered in tarps so we would be undetected until we made it to Ifo refugee camp. And that's kind of when we kind of just could breathe, because then we were someone else's responsibility. I remember getting in line and the UNICEF, and they were giving us our tents and our little 2 bags of rice, and we got the little milk, oil jug, and we finally got our ID cards with our names, and that solidified our status as refugees, essentially, because we needed those cards to get food. We had to get in line 3 times a day to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But we stayed there for 2.5 years, going for miles to look for food, to look for water, going into the bushes and venturing off into the unknown to use the bathroom. And eventually the place got so overcrowded because there were more refugees coming than space they had. So we got transferred to the Dab refugee camp, which is now one of the world's largest refugee camps. And the conditions there really weren't any better. It was still overcrowded and underfunded. It was atrocious. You had people that have lost people that couldn't find people that have lost any single thing they've owned. The reason why I don't have one single picture of my childhood back home. One of the things that I really wish I had is a picture of my dad, because he died when I was young, and there's not one single picture of him that exists. And if it did, he probably died with, went down with the house or wherever the heck we were living. So you've got people that left everything they've owned and everything they've known, and they're all just in a trance, suffering from this post-traumatic. So the refugee camps are really the worst experiences, I feel like, that affected everyone in some way. But it also kind of shaped us, because you had to struggle, you had to survive, you had to just fight to get through to make it to the next day, which is what we all did. And eventually, through connections, we ended up moving to Nairobi, Kenya. And eventually we were sponsored and had the privilege of coming to this great land. And we made it here, but it's funny, and I remember when we came off the flight at JFK, we walked out and here are these moving escalators, and we're like, oh my God! And then there were this like devil-operated automatic doors that just opened, and everybody and that was fantastic. And I remember being at awe, like, oh my God. But that was short-lived, because I remember we got in the car and the people from the refugee resettlement company, some church, was driving us to our home, to our new apartments. And we were driving, and I see people on the street, laying on the street corners and the freeway underpasses. And I'm like, what are they doing? Are they protecting the city? Are they? And, I thought they were night guards. And the lady's like, no, honey, they're homeless, through our translator. And I'm like, homeless? What do you mean homeless? Homeless? How? I'm homeless. Like, how could they be homeless? And that's like a fact that I still grapple with to this day. You have this image of America as being this great promised land, and then you have parts of it that are no better than a third world country in reality. But and I remember coming, and I'm gonna tell you guys one funny story, because when we came, in our first apartment that we went to, it was in a really horrendous part of town. It was overrun with man-sized rats and cockroaches. I mean, to a point where I remember my mom, we spoke zero English, and I mean zero, like yes, no, we couldn't tell the difference. And I remember she went to the office lady and said, "Fly, fly," because these cockroaches were flying. And the lady said, "What are you touching?" She's like, "Fly, fly, fly, fly." I mean, we speak with hands if you've seen Somalians. So the lady didn't know what was going on, but knew enough that there was a problem with the apartment. So she sent in, what do you call those people that come and fix it? There you go. No, the people that... There you go. Exterminator. And I remember the following day he came, and all 7 of us are just in there, and he's like, "Is there a problem?" And my mom was like, "Something fly, fly, fly." This guy's like, what are you talking about? He fly. And he's like, okay. So he ends up kind of checking the house himself and going to every crevice, and he can't find anything. I mean, we're still, all 7 of us are following him. He takes a step, we're taking a step. So you can just visualize that. And he ends up in the bathroom, and lo and behold, he opens, turns the lights, and these things are like scattered. So he steps back, he's like, "Jesus!" Who's behind him? My mom. And she goes, "Yes, Jesus, fly, fly!" So that story, it stays with me, and I'm sure that guy is out there somewhere retelling it and retelling it and retelling it. But, Tukwila, I came here in 2003 because I'm not native to here. We landed up in Atlanta, Georgia. So, but when I decided to move here to Seattle, Tukwila was one of the first places I landed in and settled in. And I did that mainly because it has a great number of Somalians, and I kind of love my people. I don't know, I feel like I'm more comfortable where they are. They get me, they understand me, I get them, I understand them. But another part is also it's really ethnically, racially, culturally, religiously diverse, and that's what makes it beautiful. And I'm glad to be here and to have made some wonderful friends. Once again, thank you for inviting me, and thank you guys for listening.